Have you ever heard of someone who, as a child, heard God's voice so clearly that their life was changed forever? Samuel's story is like this: exciting, full of twists and turns, and deeply inspiring. It is a journey that shows us how obedience and faith can change the course of an entire nation. Get ready to dive into one of the Bible's most powerful narratives, a story that reveals God's power through obedience and purpose. It all started at a time when Israel was in crisis. Judges ruled the people, but corruption and idolatry had taken over the nation. It was a time of spiritual darkness, and God's voice seemed distant. It was in this context that Anna, a barren woman with an afflicted heart, presented herself before the Lord in tears. In her fervent prayer in the temple, Hannah asked God for a son and made a bold promise. If he granted her this blessing, she would dedicate the child to divine service all the days of her life. 1 Samuel 1:11. God heard your prayer. Before long, Hannah gave birth to a boy whom she named Samuel, which means heard by God. When Samuel was still a child, Hannah fulfilled her promise, taking him to the temple of Shiloh to be raised and serve the Lord under the care of the priest Eli. Imagine the weight of that decision. Anna gave her son to the Lord with the confidence that he would take care of the boy and fulfill a greater purpose through his life. In the temple, Samuel grew up in an environment of devotion and service, but also surrounded by corruption. Eli's sons, Hophni and Phinehas, abused their roles as priests, dishonoring God and oppressing the people. 1 Samuel 2:12-17. Still, Samuel remained faithful, showing that even in the midst of darkness, those who dedicate themselves to God can shine like lights. It was then, on a peaceful night, that something extraordinary happened. Samuel, still young, was sleeping in the temple when he heard a voice calling his name, "Samuel, Samuel." Not understanding what was happening, he ran to Eli, thinking that the priest had called for him. But Eli, realizing that it was God speaking, instructed Samuel to respond, "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears." 1 Samuel 3:10. From that moment on, Samuel's life changed forever. God revealed to him the divine plans and called him to be a prophet, a spokesman for the Lord, for the nation of Israel. Samuel received a difficult message. God would judge the house of Eli because of his children's sins and Eli's neglect to correct them. Imagine the courage it took for a young man to deliver such a harsh message to the priest who had raised him. Samuel grew up as a respected and God-fearing leader, guiding the people in times of challenge and always seeking divine direction. His faithfulness made him a central figure in Israel's history, serving as the nation's last judge before the establishment of the monarchy. If you're enjoying this story so far, remember to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone special who also needs to know the powerful lessons from Samuel's life. Every detail of this narrative has something to teach us about faith, courage, and obedience. As the years went by, Israel faced powerful enemies, such as the Philistines, and the people began to cry out for a king like the other nations had. Even though God was the true king of Israel, the Israelites wanted a human leader who would guide them in battle and represent their strength. The people's insistence saddened Samuel, but God guided him to respond to the request, explaining that it was not Samuel who they were rejecting, but God himself as king. 1 Samuel 8:7. Samuel anointed Saul as the first king of Israel, obeying divine order. Saul, a man of impressive appearance and chosen by God to lead the people, began his reign with humility and success. However, his disobedience and pride soon led to his ruin. Samuel, once again, had to fulfill his role as a prophet and confront Saul for his sins. He declared God's sentence: the kingdom would be taken from Saul and given to someone else, to someone with a heart after God's. 1 Samuel 13:13-14. This journey of Samuel shows us the impact of hearing and obeying God's voice, even when circumstances are difficult. It is also a powerful reminder that even in times of crisis, God is at work, raising up leaders and fulfilling his purposes. What happened to Saul, and who will be God's next chosen leader? Stay with us, because the story is just beginning, and there is much more to learn about the divine purpose in the lives of Samuel and Israel. Oh, and don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone special. This message can transform lives. Samuel, guided by God's wisdom and guidance, knew that Saul's rejection as king marked a new stage in Israel's history. Although saddened by Saul's failure, Samuel remained faithful to the divine mission. God instructed him to go to Jesse's house in Bethlehem to anoint Israel's next king, someone who would not be chosen for his appearance or strength, but for having a heart after God. 1 Samuel 16:7. Arriving at Jesse's house, Samuel saw the man's oldest sons, and for a moment thought that one of them, with an imposing appearance, was the chosen one. However, God made it clear that he does not see as man sees, but looks at the heart. So one by one, the sons of Jesse passed before Samuel, but none were approved by God. Then Samuel asked, "Are these all your children?" Jesse replied that there was still the youngest, who was taking care of the sheep. This young man was David, and when he was called, God said to Samuel, "Arise and anoint him. This is he." 1 Samuel 16:12. Samuel anointed David in the presence of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon the young man from that day on. However, David's path to the throne would be long and full of challenges, as Saul still reigned, and his envy of David would grow as God blessed him. Meanwhile, Samuel continued to play his role as prophet and judge, guiding Israel and counseling David. Samuel lived to see the transition between the judges and the monarchy and was an essential figure in both periods. He confronted kings, anointed leaders, and remained faithful to God at all times. However, the end of Samuel's life came, and his death was a time of great sadness for Israel. 1 Samuel 25:1. He was remembered as a man of God who dedicated his life to divine service from childhood until his last days. His story is not just about Israel's leadership, but also about faithfulness, courage, and obedience to God, regardless of the circumstances. And you, what can you learn from the story of Samuel? What areas of your life need to be surrendered to God with the same level of trust and obedience? Remember that God can use anyone who is willing to listen to his voice and follow his leading. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share with someone who needs inspiration today. Samuel's life is a powerful example of how God can act in the midst of challenges and lead us to our purpose. Thank you for following this incredible journey. May Samuel's lessons continue to inspire you to seek God's will in your life. Until next time.